Normally I don't review re-releases, as I've previously reviewed this album before, and it makes more sense to review both albums together, but this album is different. In 2008, Taylor Swift released Fearless, her second studio album. This is the album most people reference when they're talking about Taylor Swift. More specifically, this is the album most people reference when they're talking about Taylor Swift before she knew you were trouble when you walked in. 13 years have gone by since the release of Fearless, and Taylor Swift is arguably one of the most successful pop artists today. I'm serious. Taylor Swift has arguably some of the most loyal fans in music. However, you can't deny that Taylor Swift does make some really good music. It just depends on really what you're into. And I, personally, am not exactly into Taylor Swift. I think a lot of people have the same gripe about Taylor Swift, that she writes a lot of the same things about loving a guy or breaking up with a guy. However, a lot of this seems to come from old Taylor Swift, back when she was signed to Big Machine Records. Nowadays, Taylor Swift isn't exactly afraid to write how she feels. I've seen that expressed a lot more on albums like Lover, Folklore, Evermore, and it's why I've liked her more recent albums as opposed to her earlier releases. So, 13 years later, Taylor Swift releases Love Story, Taylor's version. And there's not one person that you can go to that's a Taylor Swift fan that doesn't say they love Taylor's version. I personally like the Taylor's version of Love Story. However, Swifties, oh my goodness, today's the day she released Fearless again! Once upon a time, Taylor Swift was 18 years old. Now, at the point of re-releasing this album, she is 31 years old. This album felt like a fresh coat of paint. I went into this album kind of like expecting just what we get from a remake, but it's honestly not that bad. In fact, I was actually really impressed with it. Look, I remember being really young when Fearless was originally released. And to be honest, I wasn't exactly jazzed by it. It just sounded like another country album, you know, the likes of which Keith Urban was releasing, or Tim McGraw. They were everywhere. So I was already sick of the country sound. And that was kind of what Taylor was doing on Fearless. However, here, we now know who Taylor Swift is. We've seen her through the Red phase. We've seen her through 1989. Well, she said, "Welcome to New York." She knew you were trouble when you walked in. And shame on her now. We saw her in Reputation, where she tried to do the hip-hop thing and it didn't really work. And we see her get sentimental on albums like Lover, Folklore, and Evermore. Namely, Folklore and Evermore. You know, I was honestly not disappointed listening to this. I thought this was a really great listen. But I would be lying if I said that I fully enjoyed this project. There were some elements that made me cringe. I thought that, you know, it was weird listening to a 31-year-old sing about songs she wrote when she was 18. That's like being in your mid-30s and reading fan fiction you wrote about Grey's Anatomy when you were like 15. Mind you, that's not uncommon. And I will give credit where credit's due. There are times where it works. I really enjoyed the idea of 15, where, you know, she's reminiscing on, like, what it was like to be in love when she was 15. Now she's 18/31, and she's looking back on this like, wow, I fell for this boy. Whoa. So a lot of these songs really just go back and forth with me. It's like either I like it because it sounds more reminiscent, or I don't like it because it's like, it feels like she hasn't learned from past mistakes. You know, it kind of feels like a step backwards. And I get it, this is a re-release. She's basically redoing what she did on Fearless. So, you know, what should I expect? And of course there are the out of the vault songs. You know, like this is the Disney vault where all these movies are going to be coming out for the first time in like 80 years. But watch out because they're going to leave as soon as you listen to them. There are 26 songs on this album, including the 13 originals from Fearless. And I'm going to be honest with you, upon getting to the out of the vault songs, I was already satisfied enough. So I can't exactly pinpoint my feelings on these out of the vault songs. These songs were also really good, but I don't know, I felt like something was missing here. I get it, it's a re-release, but I felt like more could have been done here. I think what would have been great, actually, was to hear some original tracks on here. Not just that, but include songs from her previous album, not Evermore. I'm talking about the self-titled debut that came out before Fearless. You know, like Teardrops on My Guitar, remastered, that would have sent me to space. So I'm not knocking that this album is pretty powerful. I think this album was pretty good. For a re-release, I am very impressed that it felt so new for something that is so nostalgic. But I think there's a great many missed opportunities that come from this album, and in the end, after listening to it, it leaves me wanting more. So I enjoyed this album, but I think there could have been more, considering there's 26 songs on this album. Fearless, Taylor's version, gets a 3 out of 5 scratches. It's what I expected to hear from a re-release. It's a remastered remake of all the songs we know and love from the 2008 classic with some extra songs. But I think this would have been a great opportunity to remaster other songs that she made previously on her self-titled debut. I think this would have been a great chance to release more original music. However, I think that this album not only does a great job satisfying fans, it will also do a great job satisfying pop fanatics, and I do think it is worth giving a listen.